Okay. Sorry, I just need to move my flowers for a second because I have really big flowers that are for me that somebody brought. Somebody sent them actually for me here. So anyway, I guess we'll talk about the flowers. This is a guy that I went on 2 dates with. I medium like him, which is good. I actually like to medium like somebody. Because, you know, when you like somebody, you love somebody right off the bat, it's usually not a good sign, I think. I do think. I think that when you have really strong feelings about somebody that you don't know, that is a sign of mental illness and not reality. So I like medium liking somebody. He's really nice. He's older, not as old as my ex. Here's the thing. The text banter is not there. It's really not there. He uses a lot of punctuations. He doesn't use emojis. And like I kind of text like one line after the next, and he's a pretty concise texter, and he's always looking for like clarification of jokes and stuff, and then he doesn't get my jokes, and so right off the bat I was like, okay, we don't jive because you don't get my humor, and that's kind of a deal breaker. But I do think that also what I've realized from dating people is that the people who you have a great text banter with, who you're texting all day and all night, it actually almost makes the time that you have together less valuable. Like the quality of time you spend when you're actually in person, I feel like it's diminished because you are so used to communicating with each other behind a screen. I don't know if that's true or not. I do know with my ex-husband too, like he was a man of few words on text. He wouldn't even spell out yes and no. He would just write Y or N like that. Like how lazy can you be? But still to this day, like I write paragraphs and he sends me like 2 words back. And I'm like, okay, well, I hope you read all that. So anyway, I don't know. I went on 2 dates with him. We met on Raya. I don't want to give too much away because frankly, it's gotten me in trouble before. But I'm just going to keep going on dates. I'm not going on dates with any other people because I don't have time really. So I don't know. I feel like I'm just going to keep seeing how it's going. We have just gone to dinner twice, so we'll see. But then he sent me these flowers today at work. He asked me yesterday what my production studio is called because he said he had a friend over who's in the business. So I just let him know. And then lo and behold, and I was looking at them and I'm like, wow, they really are. Like these flowers are so beautiful. And then my crazy ass brain is like, did he pick those? If he chose those, like, how does he know what a beautiful flower arrangement is? Like that's a little femme. And then I'm like, maybe he didn't pick them. Maybe like his housekeeper picked them. And I'm like, that's putting the task on someone else. You can't win. You literally can't win, but they are so beautiful. Which is, I mean, like, it's nice to get flowers. I particularly love getting flowers, but I do think when men get women like a dozen red roses, it's like, it's too much. It's kind of cringe. It's just too romantic. You know what I mean? The other thing that I've learned with my dating experience, and you guys have probably followed along for the train wreck that it's been, is like, I'm not in a rush with this guy. You know, it's been 2 dates. He asked me to come over yesterday. I was like, no. There was like 2 weeks before our first and second date, even though he was asking me to go out with him before, but I was like, I'm just going to take care of me because I'm not going to have sex with this person until commitment. If we get there, which the likelihood is slim because, you know, there's more no's than yeses, and that's fine. I'm just enjoying getting to know people. So that's my dating life update. So far, so good. I'd like to know what your opinion is on this, and I don't know how you're going to give me your answer. I guess you could DM me, but do you think people's affection can grow if you don't feel it right off the bat. I've heard mixed reviews on this, and actually Anna Kai, who I had on a couple weeks ago, said something on her podcast that I thought might have some accuracy to it. She said the guy needs to like the girl more than the girl likes the guy. And this is because the way men and women are wired is that if the man thinks he can do better, he will try. Whereas a woman is more inclined to pick someone and invest in that person and be committed. And I feel like that's how I'm wired. I like do have tunnel vision in relationships. But I think it takes me a little while to get there first. And I just wonder if your affection can grow like your like sexual chemistry with somebody can grow. Also, how do you tell somebody you don't like the way they make out? Is that something you can fix in someone? You know, the guys who like, I don't know. This isn't the guy that I'm seeing right now, by the way. This is just another guy that I was dating in the early fall. Like the way he kissed was like so much tongue, and I'm like, oh, like you don't want to like taste what you ate for breakfast. It's and then it becomes like so much spit. How do you go through life? It actually makes me think that maybe they don't have a lot of experience making out with people, which makes me feel good, but also like I don't want to have to teach you how to make out, and I don't want to offend you by critiquing the way that you make out. There's a few different ways that a girl does not want to be kissed. One, she doesn't want to be kissed where you aggressively pull her head and then like you bang teeth. She also doesn't want to be kissed with the full tongue all the way in the back of her throat, like moving around. We do not like that. We do not, I repeat, we do not like that. Also, I think the girl can bite the lip. The guy, I don't want you to bite my lip. You're too aggressive and strong, and like let the girl be the aggressive one because you already have an advantage. Definitely if it's a first time make out, there will be no pulling hair. There will be no hair pulling. There will be no hickeys. There will be no like you don't put your hand up I mean you can that I think is a case-by-case basis, but there will be no hair pulling. There's no pushing onto a bed or a couch or any other, well, another surface actually could be hot. It just depends how fast you want this to move. But like the aggressive stuff, you can't do early on. That takes trust building because you don't know if you're being like attacked. If this is somebody you just met. It's not funny. Okay, so anyway, those are the things I've learned this week. I have a very special guest today. She has a podcast of her own called The House Guest. And her name is Kenzie Elizabeth. She lives in Dallas and she's 27, which is, I think, my youngest guest. I think Gracie Norton might be, she thinks she's a little older than that. She's the same age as my sister Sophie, which makes me think she's a baby, but she has been through so much. She seems like someone who is a wise soul. She actually lost her brother less than a year ago. So the conversation takes us to some really touching and heartbreaking conversations. I just said conversation twice. Touching and heartbreaking places. And she has a lot of insight on just how to navigate grief. She's really in the thick of it. And we talk about how to navigate grief in friendships, in family dynamics, and within yourself. So this conversation was really beautiful, and I think it would be helpful. This conversation kind of bounced around. We talked about grief. We talked a lot about changes, a lot about life changes, a lot about friendship dynamics, family dynamics, about remaining the same and changing, and the discomfort that you feel and the discomfort that it might cause in your relationships. And I just think it's a really I just think it was a really beautiful conversation. So without any further ado, thank you so much for listening to the show. And I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as I enjoyed talking to Kenzie. Okay, so without further ado, we have Kenzie Elizabeth here. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Coming all the way from Dallas. And what brought you out here? Just podcasts?
Yeah, so podcasting, and also I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan.
Stop it.
And they're doing, well, I'm here to podcast, but they have the like Gilmore Girls Christmas thing this week, so I had to extend my trip so I can go to Gilmore Girls during Christmas time. I went earlier to do the tour earlier this year.
Why do I feel like Gilmore Girls like took place in Philadelphia or somewhere it snows?
Well, it takes place in Connecticut, but it was actually shot in Los Angeles to just kind of like ruin that for you, you know? Yeah, anyways, we did the tour. I lived in LA also for 5 years. I didn't do a single touristy thing. I didn't whatever. So we did the tour. My best friend Dom and I, so excited. We do the whole thing. We're telling everyone, we're recording that day. We're telling everyone in the office that we're going to Gilmore Girls, whatever. We get there. That was the one set that was closed that day. So anyways, I was like, I'm coming back for Christmas and we have to go. We also went to Disney yesterday. Like, we're kind of doing it all.
Oh my God, Disney?
I know.
Disney's
that's why
fun.
I'm so
Wait,
tired.
you guys are Disney adults? You went to Disney with no kids?
Yeah, I guess so. Because I haven't been to Disney.
That's a Disney adult.
I've only been twice in my life when I was like
a horrible
4.
person. No,
literally. I'm going to get like reamed on the internet. And one thing about me is that like if I like something, I am so obsessive and it's like my entire personality. Thank God I don't like Disney that much. Like, I could go once every decade.
Were you wearing ears? Were you wearing many ears?
Let me tell you something. When I have children, I'm telling them that Disneyland is just something that you see in the movies. Like, I will not be taking my child there. You know what I mean?
You will save years of your life not bringing your kids to Disneyland.
My aunt would tell us, like, anytime we want to go to McDonald's or something as kids, that, it burned down.
It's closed, yeah.
It's closed. So, like, I grew up thinking that, like, McDonald's had, like, some crazy fire problem across the United States of America. You know?
It's like just the oil from those fries. It's so flammable.
It happens so fast. Sorry, kids.
No, I know. My son now is like 6 and he's getting to the age where he's like, Mom, why is McDonald's closed at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday? I'm like, would you just shut up? Just
they have weird hours. Sorry.
It's like, it's a Catholic holiday. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, okay. So there's so much to talk about, but you have a podcast called The House Guest, right? And you talk a lot about relationships and navigating life in your 20s. I feel like my podcast is similar, but it's just like navigating life 30s and older pretty much. So it's interesting. I guess if we started younger, then we'd have less to navigate. I don't even know. Do you think you're going to have less problems if you deal with them in your 20s?
I think you'll have less for the ones that you can control, or maybe not less problems, but I think you'll be better equipped to handle them. But I think at the end of the day, like, you're always gonna have problems.
Yeah,
you know?
new things are always gonna come up.
Yeah,
but I do think that there's a great benefit to kind of looking at your traumas and going to therapy, or not even therapy. I mean, therapy is such like a controversial word, honestly, strangely enough nowadays. A lot of people want to do coaching or something, but just like being introspective in your 20s, I think can be a great service to you in your 30s. Do you find anything specifically to be helpful to help you through healing traumas and...
Oh my God, everything. I've gone through a lot in life too. So I've been in so much therapy. I was like court mandated to go to therapy when I was in like 5th grade. My parents divorced, like so stupid. But I've been in therapy on and off for like majority of my life. I mean, I've obviously taken like large breaks in between that, but since starting in 5th grade, like I've at least had a therapist that I could go to. I just think I get a lot of it from my dad. Like my dad, my family, a lot of us, like we have like a ton of mental health problems that just kind of run rampant. And so,
I mean, doesn't everybody?
Yeah, I feel like literally everyone these days. So I'm really lucky in the sense that my dad is very proactive and like intentional. So like from a very young age, he was teaching me like routines and habits and things that like will help you be less anxious. But yeah, I think that, I mean, so much of my life is, I wouldn't say easier, but I just like can navigate it better because of things that I've learned, you know, in therapy or from people who are older than me. Like one thing about me, like I love an older woman. Like any woman who's above the age of 60, I have so many questions for her because I'm like, I would rather learn from them, and I'm also just like more interested. Like when someone, like my favorite follows even online are like people who live in like the North Pole. Like I'm obsessed with people who live lives that have nothing to do with mine. Yeah, and like what you can learn from them. Yeah. So anyways, I don't even think that really answers your question.
No, it does. I think it does. I think it's great that you're going to therapy. Do you do anything else for trauma or healing or grief healing? I know you recently had a really traumatic experience in your family, losing your brother?
So I've been in therapy forever. So that's the number one. I have been doing EDMR.
Oh, okay.
Which is like eye movement therapy. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. Is it tapping too?
Yeah, so it's tapping too. So that, what it does is it essentially like restores memories. I'm not going to be explaining this correctly, but like it restores memories in your body so that they're not as like emotionally charged. I think it's something like that. It does really help. It's incredibly exhausting.
Really?
I was actually even going through it before losing my brother with like other stuff. So I've had a lot of experience with that. Have you ever heard of brain codes?
No, and I feel like that's something I would know about.
So up your alley. So they have offices in, I believe, like Denver and Dallas. I think maybe Aspen, Dallas, somewhere in Colorado, I think. But it's, again, I'm not gonna be able to explain this correctly. I'm so exhausted right now. Like I feel like I can't even like have it. We were talking about this before.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you go to podcasts, it's like I can't even like get a thought out. But brain codes it's kind of like brain training.
Oh, I think I do that. It's a neurofeedback.
Yes, it's neurofeedback. Okay. I sit there and they like attach you to like a brain kind of scan.
Is it thing. Like a probe that sticks to your head?
Yes, and
they
like
use like the gel.
Yes,
it ruins your hair.
Yeah,
yes.
So annoying. But I did that, especially like leading up to this. We lost my brother in January, which this has been literally the worst year of my life.
Sorry.
Thanks,
That's
but
so traumatic.
I'd been going through brain codes before, and I remember there was a moment like February where I was like, oh my god, this stuff works, because the way that I was able to do it, like my normal self, you always think like, how would you ever survive? You always think like, I will never survive this, and then like it's really insane what you actually do have to survive at the end of the day. It's not even that you're so strong, it's that you just like don't have a choice. But brain codes, like neurofeedback, I think out of anything I've ever done, I actually think that has been the most beneficial.
Wow. Just
the way that it's retrained my brain. Actually, going back to Gilmore Girls, I literally sit there and I watch Gilmore Girls as I do the training. Some people like meditate and whatever, like I'm watching Gilmore Girls, but I'm like, that's my form of meditation. But brain codes, I would say, it has been the most beneficial thing I've ever done, actually, as far as like, maybe it's not necessarily like processing trauma, but it retrained my brain, and I was just in a way better headspace to be able to handle things. So that I like want to have them on my podcast. I am gonna have them on my podcast. It's just been like scheduling.
A lot of times, I think, because one of the reasons I started doing neurofeedback was for ADHD, but with ADHD, there's oftentimes a kind of a compulsive component where you have like obsessive thinking. And I think anytime there's grief or loss or something, and you find yourself in a circular thought pattern, that can make it so much harder to feel calm and to feel like you have some control over your emotions.
And you're able to like talk yourself off a cliff easier. You're right, I'm not spiraling, I'm not dwelling as much. I mean, like obviously I am doing all those things, but not to the extent that I would have been doing them without brain codes. That has actually been and one of like kind of like my mentors at home, she also does brain codes, and we always talk about how like it's so crazy, because like when you're sitting there, you're kind of like, look, I'm watching Gilmore Girls. There's some things attached to my head, like what the fuck is this doing, but it actually works.
Mine is different. Mine's called Mind Lift, MYND Lift, and it's an app that I use, and I have to kind of like watch. There's a few different kind of games that you can play, but it's like there's a man that's like in the ocean, and he's scuba diving, and every time like I'm off track, he'll sink down, and when I'm like on track, he'll float up to the surface, and I close my eyes so I can hear him either sinking, or like you can hear like birds chirping if he's getting closer to the surface of the water. And then I have a therapist, Dr. Dow, who came on my podcast. I actually did ketamine therapy with him.
I have so many questions about that.
It's great for trauma and healing. Not that anything needs to be fixed when you're dealing with grief. I feel, but still, but anyway, so I haven't been doing it consistently enough, because one of my things is consistency, because I have ADHD. I forget to do it, but I'm trying. I did it last night, so I'm getting back on track. But is yours something like that you have to go to, or do you have it at home?
So I wonder if it is like actually the same thing, because I go in person to this place because I enjoy going, but I know that there's an option to do it remotely. So I think you would just buy the equipment and you would do something at home, and you can do different things. I'm also wearing headphones, by the way. So like whenever I'm watching it, there's like some noise, and it's kind of, I think it's like positive reinforcement in that way. literally the worst when it comes to explaining this, because also I'm really in, especially like from like 22 to 25, I have this like hyperfixation on Dr. Amen. Like I love him.
I had him on my podcast.
I love him, and I've
great.
gone into the Amen clinics. Like they have
me
some
too.
in Dallas.
I've had the scans and all the brain maps.
Sometimes when I'm explaining brain codes, I think I get the two kind of confused. That's why I like don't really love to speak to like what it actually does. All I know is that it actually works. Like I'm having so many of my friends and like people in my family are now wanting to do brain codes, because I'm like, actually, like out of anything I've ever done, that's been, I don't know why. This is what I mean. My brain's not really working today, because that should have been like my immediate answer. I just kind of forgot for a second.
Yeah. No, it's neurofeedback, and neurofeedback is positive reinforcement that helps to retrain certain neural pathways in your brain. So when you think about it, like if you are, I think it's something like 80% of the thoughts that we think today are the same thoughts we thought yesterday. Like we're very pattern oriented in the way we think. So it's hard for people who are getting stuck and not able to use like our full brain. That's how I've understood it. But I mean, I'm sure there's so much more to it than that. But I've liked it too. I don't know. Yeah. I do it from home though. It's super easy. I bought like the contraption for a couple $100. It was pretty cheap actually. Yeah. And then I paid $200 a month for the app, and my therapist like will kind of program it to what I need to work on, because he can actually brain map to see what parts of my brain need more focus. Now, mind you, I also spent almost $3,000 to do this exact same thing in a woman's living room in Santa Monica, and so that was a scam. I think that you got to be careful. I don't think you need to pay too much money for it. There's a place called Brain Health. I think it's called Brain Health. I did a brain map there, and this is where, I don't know, one thing that I'm in the brain world, I guess, in LA. There's a lot of options, but
I was like, it's honestly been an interest of mine that's like kind of fallen off in the past like year and a half. But for I have, honestly, because I think I just had so many other hobbies that I've adapted. Yeah. But it was something that I'm so interested in brain health. It is so fascinating, and it's like the most important thing that we have, and it's the last thing that we ever focus on. Like Dr. Amen always talks about that, but yeah, it's just so interesting. So I think anything brain mapping, it's at the very least, it's just really fascinating.
It's really, it's good. It's just information. So that's awesome. Okay, let me ask you a question about relationships and friendships. Because you're 27 now. When's your birthday? Did you recently?
August 1st.
Okay, so you're like a new kind of 27-year-old.
I guess.
Yeah. Wow. To be 27 again. Actually, that's so funny, because I remember hearing when I was 27 that like that's the year that so many celebrities like end up like dying, honestly. And I don't know if there's something about the year 27 that makes people go batshit. Like, do you feel?
I wonder. I just think about like Casey Musgrave's like latest album, and in her song, it's like, I turned 27, everything started to change, and it's like something about your 27th year. I think I'm not like so into like astrology and that stuff, so I wouldn't know, but there is something monumental about turning 27. I just don't know what it is.
I think it's your Jupiter return. I'm not really sure. That sounds right. I think it might be. Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. Don't take my word for it. But okay, so friendships and relationships. What is one piece of friendship advice you think every 20-something-year-old needs to hear?
Okay, I don't think this is like specifically just friendships, but something that I always think about. This is something that was shared with me when I was in my early 20s, and I kind of just lived by it. And it's like, hold everything in life with an open hand. But if you think about the opposite, like you hear that all the time, and you're kind of like, okay, whatever, obviously, you know? Yeah. But then if you think about the opposite, and you're like, have your hand out, and then you think your career, a relationship, a friendship, and you're squeezing it, that is in turn killing it. Like there's no room to breathe. There's no room for oxygen to get to it. It's not going to grow. Yeah. So I think the best thing that you can do, especially at 27, is like friendships in your 20s are just kind of weird. Like everyone's doing something different. People are changing and evolving. Like you could have had friends that you've had your entire life that you're just going in really different directions, and that's okay. And just because a friendship ends doesn't mean that either person is like bad or evil. Even if there was a falling out, it's just sometimes you're not really meant to be in each other's lives, and like that's okay. I'm someone who doesn't like change at all in relationships, so it's something that like really hits me so deeply, and that I have made so many mistakes in, I think largely because I don't like change. So I will either let things slide or ignore certain things or make excuses and just kind of like not leave, where I feel like if I would have just at least taken a step back when I saw the first signs, and that could be like I did something that like isn't gonna work, or like they did something, it doesn't mean that I'm like, oh my god, I'm holier than thou. It's not that. It's just like seeing like, oh, this isn't really gonna work. I think if I would have just like held things with an open hand, it would have been easier. But I also think like in your 20s, your relationships and your friendships are just going to change. And I take it so personally because I care so much about being a good friend. So like when a friendship changes, I view that as like I failed and no one else around me failed, and I did everything. Like I'm very hard on myself when it comes to it. So it's something that I'm like actively working on, especially at 27, just especially in grief. Like your friendships are going to change. Like the people that you think are going to be there for you are not, and the ones that you would never expect will. Like that is the one consistent piece of grief advice that I hear from any of like my best friend lost her father recently, and like we've done all, like she was with us in the funeral home planning my brother's funeral. Like we're very, very close. So having her, and we've just been having these discussions, and like I think when you go through grief, people who have also gone through grief like kind of surround you, and you just like you navigate closer to like those kinds of people. And that is that is the most consistent thing I hear from people, is that like your friendships change entirely, and the ones that you think are going to be there aren't, and the ones that you never would have ever expected to be so close to are. It just like really shakes things up in your life. So anyways, I'm really hard on myself just in general, especially with friendships, but I think you have to just hold things with an open hand and like let it go. Not every friendship is meant to be forever, and sometimes they circle back, and that's fine.
Actually, I think on one of your podcast episodes, one of your guests was said, and I just loved this, you don't know everybody who's going to love you. And I love that, because it's like there's more friends to come. Like you don't need to hold on to the ones you have with such a tight grasp.
It's like such a scarcity mindset thing that we have too. I don't know. I think for me though, it's that it's like I'm making everything about myself, but it's like
this is you.
I like I take it really personally, and I am very hard on myself when something like that ends.
I think I relate to that. I remember in my marriage too, like when I met my ex-husband, I was 25, he was 40. And then when I had kids, you know, that's something that changes you. You're just not the same person that you were before you had kids. You're not the same person you were before you lost your brother. Like things that like are so monumental in your life, not to compare losing your brother to having kids, but like
it's just change.
Life experiences like will totally change you. And to feel an obligation or a guilt about not remaining the same is so odd. Like that we feel like we owe it to other people to remain the same versions of ourselves for their comfort.
Absolutely.
And it's so odd. Like you have to check yourself.
Yeah. That's what I always say too. I think in life in general, and you know, grief, life change, it is so interesting how people like hate when you change, because I think a lot of the time we all do this. Like you project what you want someone else to be onto them. Like you see this all the time with like influencers and celebrities, when like they don't act or say exactly what you want them to say. It's because you have this like parasocial relationship with them to where you're projecting what you want them to be onto them, and that's not even who they are. Like I think we have to kind of like let everyone breathe a little and like be who they want to be, you know?
Right.
So it is such an interesting thing. But when it comes to life change, like I think especially like in grief, like people, that was the first thing. Like I didn't leave my house for a bit. I still don't really leave my house, honestly, in Dallas. Like I like to be at home. I don't want to be around. Like we grew up there, and like there's so many people that I knew from my childhood. Like I don't want to see people. I don't want people to ask. Like,
is this something that has always been, or since you lost your brother?
No, like since definitely in grief. Like I'm a homebody in general for sure. And I had already like stopped going out as much. I just kind of like gotten out of like my party phase. But just like there's something about it. It's so interesting because I'm like, I think if I lived somewhere else, I would be out and like I think I'd be like more normal.
I know
what
you mean.
Being in that environment, and we grew up in the suburbs, so it's not even that. I don't know. There's something about like being there and just
you don't want to be seen.
Yeah, I don't want to be seen. Is literally what it is. So. But people would go up and ask, like my best friend Macy, be like, oh my god, she seems like she's doing so much better. I'm like, I'm obviously not fucking doing better. Like newsflash, also like we're like coming up on the 1 year. I'm like, it actually just gets worse. Like you don't get better for a very long time, and like grief isn't a problem to be fixed. Like something you just like learn to deal with. But it was so annoying because I'm like, they're only saying that because like they want to feel comfortable, be like, oh, Kenzie's fine, it's totally good, we're good. Like I don't have to do anything, I don't have to care. Like they are they feel put out because like I'm going through a hard time. So therefore they want to feel more comfortable. So they want to think that. So I'm like, I hope they think that. I don't care. Like, just leave me alone, you know?
I know. I don't blame you for not wanting to have to deal with that interaction with people, because it's so complicated. Like, not only are you obviously suffering, but now you're also kind of worrying about how your suffering is making somebody else feel.
Yes.
And it's not fair. I mean, what advice would you give to a friend who just doesn't know how to be a good friend when their friend is grieving?
So I think it depends on like the proximity that you have to that friend too, because there's definitely people that like you need to be showing up at their house. Like, you need to be, there's certain, it just kind of depends on the proximity. But I would say like, it's just hard because like there's certain friends where like checking in on me once a month is like not enough. Like, that was like nowhere near what should have happened, you know? But then there's also people, it really just depends. But I think like the main thing I always tell people in grief is that people are just so scared to say the wrong thing. So they say nothing at all. And I think saying nothing at all is actually the worst thing that you can do. So first off, there are so many resources out there that tell you, like, this being one, like, tell you like how to be there for a friend. Like, I remember I went to kind of like a mentor of mine who I've known for years, and she lost her sister years ago, and I was going to her about like a friend situation. I was like devastated about it. And she said, you know, like, and I was like, look, I know not everyone, and this has been my thing, I'm like, I'm not the grief police, not everyone knows how to handle it, like, it's okay. And she was like, honestly, like, there's really not an excuse anymore. Like, there's so many free resources out there to like teach you what to do. And also, I think if your grieving friend comes to you and it says like, yeah, this actually wasn't enough, that wasn't it, there's no other correct answer other than, I'm so sorry, I'm here, what can I do? Like, there's no defense, there's no like, if they're taking that time to say that to you, like, when they have no energy at all, it just shows how much they value you and care. So to like actually like come back at it is like literally the worst thing that you could do. It's also just like gross. Like, as a person, I could never imagine doing that. But basically, don't be so scared that it forces you to do nothing. Like, just go out. And there are obviously things like to normal grieving people, these don't personally bother me that much because I just know people are trying, but it does bother a lot of people saying things like everything happens for a reason, or like you'll like, there's just a lot of things that like trigger like a grieving person. I would just say like, hey, I'm here. A lot of the time they're like, tell me what you need. It's like, that's just kind of like giving homework to the grieving person.
I know.
Also, like, asking like, how are you doing? It felt like homework for me to be like, but again, like, when my best friend lost her father, I caught myself saying that. I'm like, okay, sorry.
I know.
You know?
But it is annoying because it's like the person says it to feel like they checked off their box, but it's like, now you're just giving me something to do. And it's, I totally know what you mean.
You literally have never felt fatigue like this in your life. Like, I'm still exhausted all the time. It's like, you just don't have the energy. So I would just do things like, when there's people who aren't even close to me, I'm always sending food. Like, even if they're not, I'm like so far removed from their life. Like, I think sending food, sending that kind of stuff. But really just showing up and like being with them where they're at. You know?
Totally.
And that's like the best thing that you can do. Even just like sitting there, you don't have to talk about it. Like, I call people all the time that are grieving, but I'm not like checking in on the grief. I'm like, we're just talking. Because it's like that was another thing too, is that I felt like people were treating me like I was some sort of like creature almost. Like, they weren't just like my friend anymore. And that was difficult. It's like, you still want like some ounce of like normalcy. But I think just don't be so scared that you're going to say the wrong thing that you don't say anything at all.
I feel you on that. I definitely feel you on that. It's such a hard thing. I mean, I don't know what that feels like. I've never been there before, but I can imagine like the fact that you're still carrying on doing a podcast and like talking and you know, putting yourself out there. That's huge. Like, you're making great strides for yourself. I know that it's not linear though, the healing. It's my manager, Nikki, she lost her sister, and she was saying that we read your bio together, and she was like, oh wow, she's really still in it. This is so recent.
Thank you. But it's like, I'm someone who loves to work too. So I think it's given me some sort of like good structure and something to like do. It does suck because in grief, at least for me, the last thing I want is to be seen, you know? So it sucks that you're doing it, but I kind of got over that. There was a time where I was like, I actually think I need to quit this job because I didn't want people viewing me, but like I've been doing this for like 10 years. Like I'm not gonna like stop now. But I think at the end of the day, it's like giving me like some sort of structure, because it's like it's not good for me. Obviously, there's times when I need to just lay in bed and do nothing, but it's not good for me to have done that for the past like 10, 11 months completely.
Yeah.
So it does. I think it's just giving me like some sort of good structure. And weirdly, this has been the best year of my career. Like so many amazing things have happened where like my personal life is like literally in shambles.
Yeah.
Like, the worst it's
you've
ever
been broken open.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really, I mean, not that anybody would wish this on their worst enemy, but I mean, it's such, now a lot of people are probably learning from your experience and learning valuable tools. And, you know, I mean, we're all going to lose somebody eventually. And man, like, you know, although nobody wants to think it's going to happen to them, like you just never
everyone
know.
will at some point deal with grief, and that's why like so we lost my stepbrother like 6 years ago now, so this was not my first like completely separate situation, so this is not my first like rendezvous around
Was he young?
He was 24. So this was not like my first experience with grief and like losing someone very young, and it's just so crazy that like this is something, obviously our situation is like horrible and like 1 in a billion chance, but it's so crazy how there's so like grief is so taboo when it's something that we're all gonna experience. I remember like when Cody passed away, I was Googling like people who have lost a sibling, because it was so like you needed somebody, you needed someone to like look to, or like who understood. It wasn't even that I like needed to like have a conversation with them, it was that I needed to know that like life, they still had a life, like there was still something to that. So even people like Kelly Rizzo, I had her on the podcast recently, she's Bob Saget's widow. She's incredible, and she has built, I mean honestly, a large part of her platform is built around like conversations around grief. And that was really helpful to me. So it's like I've always been that, even since starting my YouTube channel, it's like what I'm going through, I'm very like transparent, obviously this being like the worst thing of my entire life, but it is like, it's also at times can be a little bit therapeutic, because you're connecting the amount of people that I message that have lost a sibling, or that will message me that have lost a sibling, or even just like anyone in their life. It's actually so, it's so sad, because like it's not something you really think about until it happens to you. Like you don't realize how common it is.
And then now you look at people probably differently, where you're like, you don't know what anybody could possibly be going through when you see them.
Absolutely.
So, and also you're the oldest in your family?
I'm the oldest of like our family, of the Piper family unit. So it was like me, my little sister, and Cody, and then we have like our step siblings who are like equally as close with.
Right. I feel like as an older sibling, I also take responsibility for like, I feel like if something horrible happened in my family, like I would then feel responsible for how my younger siblings are coping, and then also how your parents are doing too. Do you feel like that extra weight?
Yeah, and I think there's just something to be said about the older sibling in general. Like it does feel like, especially because whatever you said about like being parentified, like I was that when I was younger. And it does feel like an added responsibility. My parents are like the most incredible people ever. So like honestly, I'm so in awe of them in this past year. So like they've done such a good job. I feel like it would have been different. I think it would have been like a lot more extreme as far as like what I would have felt responsibility wise if I was younger. Like that we're out of the house, and like our obviously family unit is different now that we don't live like with each other, but there is like some sense of like responsibility almost that you feel. Not responsibility for the passing, but responsibility in the sense of like making sure everyone else is okay. Like my little sister is like the little sister. Like she's like she could also do the craziest thing ever, and I would like I would take care of it. You know what I mean? And like she has, you know, like she's like wild and fun and whatever. Not done like crazy in a bad way, but like that's just kind of like her personality. That's why everyone loves her. She's just like the fun, crazy one. And there is like some element of responsibility. Do
you feel like it's brought you and your sister closer, or are you guys handling it the same way or different?
We definitely handle things very differently. I think it's brought my entire family closer. Like my sister and I are very close regardless, but I think our whole family unit, even both sides of like our divorced parents, like everyone, I feel like it's brought so much closer, which again, I feel very lucky. Like whenever you lose someone in your family, it typically goes one of two ways. Your family either like drifts apart and you kind of like lose that unit, or they get way, way closer. And I'm just lucky that both times we've gotten like way, way closer.
Oh, that's great.
But like I would say like majority of experiences that I hear from people is their family like grows apart. And listen, our family could have been a Lifetime movie growing up. That's not to say like my parents' divorce, like we actually should have been a Lifetime movie. Like we had such turmoil growing up. No one got along. My parents are in a
I thought
group
you meant
chat.
Lifetime movie like white picket fence.
No, opposite. Like
I love to
Dateline.
hear a blended. Stop.
Kidding about Dateline.
I love to hear a blended family story or like success story because obviously I am divorced and I have 2 kids, so I'm like I love to hear that that's possible.
Oh, it is possible. Like we are. I talk to my stepsister like every single day, and like we are all so tight. It is possible. It was really rocky. I mean, our circumstances were rocky to begin with, but yeah, we did not have a close family unit until like probably the past couple of years. Specifically this year, my actual unit. I'm a very family-centered person, so I would say, and also like my niece and nephew being born definitely brought everyone like way, way closer together. I feel like that was like a first step of like healing in our family. It's definitely possible though. Like I'm so close. I always say to my like stepsister, because I'm so close to my niece, I'm like, had I just known that I was gonna get my niece out of this awful divorce, like I would have just shut up. You know what I mean? I would have been fine with it. But no, I'm like, I love having a massive family too. Like there's so many like good things that have come out of it, and I'm so grateful for my family. And it's so interesting. Like I have such a cool like dynamic because like even just like the cultures that both of my families, like both sides are in, like it's just cool. Yeah. So I like having a blended family now. Well, it's possible.
Okay. Now I feel like, because I'm divorced obviously, and a lot of my listeners are single women. Maybe they've also been through a divorce. Maybe they have kids. What made your parents' divorce so traumatic for you so that we can avoid that?
And like my parents are kind of like the most incredible people ever. Like they really are, but they were just young and like you don't know what you don't know. And I think it was a very messy divorce, and we were just kind of like brought into it too much. Like I just knew too much. And there were also like other people involving us that had nothing to do with my parents. Like I don't think my parents really could have even saved that at that point. So I think just like the less your kids know, the better. Like just kind of like living in delusion is probably the best
ignorance
situation.
Is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. People would, when I first got divorced, they're like, have you had the talk with your kids yet? I'm like, they're 2 and 4. Like, do I have to? I ended up, and honestly, like I don't even think my kids really still understand it because like I'm still doing Christmas with my ex, and we're all going to the same place, and like so, and we get along and we talk and stuff, and we get along enough, like we like have text battles, quarterly, but my kids, like a part of me thinks that my son still thinks we're married, and I don't want to tell him that we're not.
You don't want to break the news. I think another thing is never talk poorly about their parent to the kids, because even if you don't realize it, and this is something I didn't even realize until I was an adult, like your child is still half that person. So when you're talking negatively or like you're saying something negative around that child about their parent, like a kid will internalize that, whether you realize or even they realize it or not, and they take it on as like, well, that's like my dad or that's my mom, and like I'm part them, so you like it's
feel
so
this way about me.
You feel this way about me or whatever it might be. So I think like only ever like trying to talk very positively about them. I think it's a little different when like, let's say a parent is doing something so crazy and it's not there. Like you don't want to like make this kid think that they're amazing and they're not paying attention to them. Like there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but I think overall just like avoiding saying negative things about their parent with like, I can only imagine how difficult that is. I think that really goes a long way.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna pivot a little bit. I want to ask you, I heard in one of your episodes that you bought a house, and so you're like a 27-year-old, you have your own house, you have your own, like, how does, for other 27-year-old or even like maybe older, like people who want to be independent and, be on that trajectory to like buy their own home and live an independent life, how does one get there?
Okay, so it's like, so it's like being an influencer, like it's not relatable, like but I also started working when I was 16, so I've had a YouTube channel. Are you good
at saving?
Yeah, and that my dad is really just great with advice, and I like, listened to my dad a
him.
lot.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't always, and I'm like not like the most amazing person with my money, like literally at all.
Yeah.
But I did listen to some extent, but it's not, I don't think it's like,
You had a YouTube channel when you were 16?
yeah.
Okay.
So I started working really young, and I started making money very young. So it was like, if I would have started that at 21, I would have ended up buying the house at 31. You know what I mean? I just started young.
You started,
and
well, you
also,
saved though. I feel like I would have probably blown it all in Vegas when I was like 22 or something.
But it is just like one of those things where it's not really, I don't have good tangible advice because I was making like influencer money. It's not like I was working like a corporate ladder and stuff. You know what I mean? It isn't like,
if you did OnlyFans, you probably would have bought a house earlier.
no, and maybe I should have started that.
Yeah.
The second I turned 18, I should have done OnlyFans.
Totally.
OnlyFans didn't even exist when I was 18. So.
Yeah, me either. Unfortunately, I had to earn money the old-fashioned way. Okay, so let's talk about just a couple more things. Let's talk about career. What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about being like a lifestyle influencer and podcaster?
Okay, I think I'm not saying at all like being an influencer is like the hardest job ever, but I think just depending on what platforms people are on, like there is definitely a lot more that goes into it. And it's also, there's something to be said about people who've been able to like stay, like you grow the following and you've been able to like sustain a career for a very long time.
Yeah.
I would just say as a whole, like YouTubing and podcasting specifically, like there's just a lot more work that goes on behind the scenes than you would expect.
YouTube I just got into.
Yeah, YouTube is like a beast. YouTube is really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
Especially just like to start a channel and to gain the audience and to get yourself out there. Like I think at the same time, like, yeah, it's not the easiest job in the world, but if it was so easy, like if it's as easy as like people think, I feel like everyone would be doing it.
Right.
It's not. I think people look at someone and they're like, wow, you got paid $10,000 to post an Instagram story, like must be nice. But it's like, okay, yeah, that in itself is taking like an hour to do, to shoot the photo and to post it, whatever. Mm-hmm. But it took 10 years to get there. So it's not necessarily like, oh, you're just getting paid to do it. It's like you're getting paid to like keep the eyes on you. Like eyes are like the highest currency. There's just a lot more that goes on to it. Obviously, there are harder jobs in the world. Like I'm not sitting here saying like this is the hardest thing ever. There just is more clearly that goes into it if it's making so much money, you know?
Right. What advice do you have for somebody who wants to start a YouTube channel?
Okay,
or like me for who just went on YouTube with my podcast. What advice do you have for me?
YouTube is so hard. I mean, I'm struggling with like my podcast on YouTube. It's just so difficult.
Yeah,
but honestly,
to, like, gain new viewers and everything.
Yeah, it's tough. And it's interesting because YouTube is the #1 platform for podcasting now, which is so wild. And I just moved my podcast over to like my main channel, which I maybe should have done from the start. But I had this whole thing where I wanted like my vlogs to be separately from that, and now I'm like, okay, I should
you vlog separately. You have like a personal YouTube vlog.
It's like I do like a weekly vlog every single week.
Do you have like a little selfie stick that you bring around?
No, because like, I don't really vlog outside my house. Like I tried. I mean, I do, but I like
you vlog in your house.
People love a home vlog more than anything in the world. Like,
what do you like? I just woke up. Now I'm going to take a shower. Now I'm going to drink my coffee.
Kind of, it's like routines, but a lot of it is like home projects or like things that I'm doing, or like I have a home brand, so I'm doing more of like behind the scenes of like how I launched Friend of Mine, like things like that. But I would say if you're starting on YouTube now, I would focus on YouTube Shorts because YouTube Shorts have a higher viewership than TikTok anyways, which is insane. It has a completely different audience for sure. That's what sucks about the whole TikTok thing, is that like the people on TikTok are just so much funnier and they're cooler, and like people on YouTube Shorts are like, die, you're ugly and fat. You know what I mean?
Oh, the comments.
Yeah, like the actual audience itself is like, it has to
TikTok's comments are kind of mean.
TikTok's mean for sure, but there's still like funny girls on there.
Oh yeah.
YouTube Shorts, it feels like it's all men.
It's all men who are mean.
That's what it feels like.
Because they're kind of there for like Roblox, but then they get distracted and they're like nerds in their mom's basement that are like,
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
But I would focus on YouTube Shorts, honestly, and just growing from there.
Okay. All right. Tell us about your lifestyle, or sorry, your home brand.
Yeah, so it's a friend of mine. So I grew up kind of in the home space. Like my mom and my grandma had like a bedding and drapery company together. I would always like go into like their little shop and like make purses and do all that stuff. My mom.
So you can use a sewing machine and everything?
Like I couldn't use it, but I would pick the fabrics. My grandma, she's a seamstress, and she would do it. And then my mom's an interior decorator, so I was like always in like antique stores and like furniture stores and stuff. Like fun. It's so crazy because like as a kid, everything I hated, it's like everything I wanted to do now. You know?
My god, I love going into antiques. You hated it when you were little?
Well, I liked it, but when you have to do it as much as we did, like you're gonna hate it. You just have to sit there all day as your mom's shopping. It's not like she did it as a, like, she was working. It wasn't like we were going for fun, like, every so often.
Right.
But that's when I actually, like, started, like, I love reading. That's when I would go, and, like, Nancy Drew books are always in antique stores. And so I read every single Nancy Drew book.
Why are Nancy Drew books always in antique stores?
I don't know. It still is, because I see them all the time. Like, the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just grew up in the home space. My aunt's an interior decorator. It's just been, like, a huge thing in my family. So as I got older, I feel like I've always loved the home. But naturally, like, when I got my townhouse and then I moved into my house and I became obsessed with the home, like, honestly, I would feel like my whole life, but it just evolved in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started a home brand. We've started with, like, a lot of paper goods. We have, like, our recipe journals, our conversation starters. I host a lot.
Recipe journals?
Yeah, so I, like, love to cook, but I want it to be, like, off technology. And I'm a very sentimental person, so I like to have things that you can, like, keep and pass down. And I just wanted to be off a screen whenever I was cooking, and I wanted everything to be, like, more accessible in one book. So we launched our recipe journal, which is, like, our hero product still. Like, those are definitely, like, our best sellers. And then I created, like, dinner party cards, so, like, they're conversation cards, bunch of questions are fun. Nightcap cards that are, like, a little bit more, like, they're less appropriate. And then we just have kind of gone on from there. Like, there's a ton of things that I want to do, but I just, like, love the home. Like, I'm such a homebody, and also, like, when, like, my idea of a fun day is, like, I go to Framebridge and I'm, like, picking out mats and frames for photos and, like, doing, like, I'm just,
Wait,
like,
does Framebridge have a location?
Yes, it's, like, actually half my personality. They have multiple locations, but they just opened one in Dallas, so I, like, go there all the time. But I just love, like, anything, like, home design in the home space.
Yeah, no, I do
So it
too.
was, like, very natural.
Oh my God, that's so fun.
Yeah.
And so what's the direction of this brand going to be in?
We're growing in, like, retail right now, so we're selling a lot, like, wholesale in the next couple of months. Like, that's the goal. We're gonna have, like, aprons and mitts, and, like, a lot of it is, like, homemaking, but not in the way of, like, women need to be in the kitchen. You know what I
love
mean?
that. I love, like, homemaking from a woman who lives by herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I'm like, it's interesting because I, like, don't have a family. I'm not a mom. I'm not like doing this for a man. Like, I'm doing this because, like, I love to do it. But we'll expand into, like, probably every category in home.
Amazing.
Just, like, takes a lot of money, so that'll take some time.
Oh, I know.
You know? Very expensive.
Okay, let's end on, like, a deep question. What do you think, as a 27-year-old who's been through a lot of life, especially in the last year, what do you think is the key to living a meaningful and intentional life?
I think you have to start by, like, really building a relationship with yourself so you can get to know yourself. Like, I don't think this is just, like, a one-off answer. I think it's more, you have to live, like, by design. I just recorded with Susie Welch, and she's, like, the most incredible woman I've ever met in my life.
Who's that?
She's an NYU professor.
Okay.
She has this class called Becoming You, and it's, like, how to live this, like, authentic life. And she goes into, like, you would love this. Like, she goes into values, and you think you know what values are, and you actually don't. None
what
of
are
us do.
values?
You have to, like, take this quiz online to do it, and there's, like, 15 different ones.
Okay.
And it basically, it helps you identify, like, what to do with your life.
What do you care
right?
about?
What do you care about?
Okay.
Your aptitude, what you're good at, skill set. Like, it's just so interesting. So anyways, I spent some time with her when I was in New York a couple of days ago, and she was explaining that only 5% of people, and everyone's different, there's 3 Ds, and, like, the last one is living by design. That's what I am. I don't know what the other ones are. It's, like, deliberation and something else.
Oh, okay.
But only 5% of people live, like, by design, and I'm someone who, like, really wants this, like, full life. But I think at the end of the day, like, you can't get there without spending time with yourself, and you can't be afraid of being alone. And, like, that's something I've really, like, worked through in my 20s and, like, forced myself to be alone so I could figure out, like, and be, like, literally in silence, like, actually, which I'm so, like, I have a podcast on in the background all the time. I have music on. If I'm on a run, I'm listening to music. Like, I'm never, unless I'm intentional about it, I'm never actually, like, sitting there to, like, take the time. You almost have to treat, like, the relationship you have with yourself is, like, someone that you're dating. Like, you have to, like, really be intentional and, like, spend time alone. I think that's the best thing I ever did for myself in my 20s, and I would start there. Also, like, just, like, really practically, wait, what is it called? The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I think that's a really good way to, like, kind of start on that journey.
Okay.
But you have to, like, really first start by, like, getting to know yourself. I would do the Artist's Way, and I would actually go on, like, Susie Welch's website. She has a free test that, like, teaches you, like, helps you understand what your values are. Yeah. And I think it's really awesome. I know she has this one thing too where you can, like, say what you're good at, and then you have, like, 40 people surveyed, and they'll tell you what you're good at.
It's like, actually, you're not.
It's like, actually, like, you might think you're really good with people, but you're not. Yeah. You know? So it's just, like, interesting. But I would say you have to start by, like, actually getting silent with yourself and, like, being intentional about that to even figure out, like, what you want.
Yeah. I think that's so true, because I think in my late 20s too, I was like, I filled every part of my life with like so much stuff that the distraction to distract from having to probably sit with myself and be alone. And then, you know, it just pushes it out until now I'm just dealing with it in my mid 30s instead of dealing with it before. So I think that's
actually a pro of having divorced parents too, because like I don't want to like just get married to get married. I really want like a very healthy, like amazing marriage, because I didn't like obviously my parents didn't have that. And they didn't have a bad marriage, but like they didn't have like the kind of marriage that I would want. So I think that like seeing that and learning from that perspective, like I don't want to just kind of like do things to do them. I want to like make sure it's right for me, because I saw that. I don't know if I would feel that way had I not, you know?
Yeah. I think that there's a whole movement of that. I don't know if it's because everybody's parents are divorced, but a lot of girls in their 20s are just like, I'm not in any rush. I don't know. I guess I was a little behind on that.
But your parents are married.
They are.
So that's like an interesting, you know?
But they're not like I don't want that relationship though. Yeah. They're like roommates, but they do respect each other. Like there's things that they don't yell. There's things that obviously
there's like a respect there.
Yeah, that has kept them together. Because you know, people who have a really tumultuous relationship, just they don't last 30 years. If they do, it probably kills them. Yeah, you know,
very true.
But anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. Joining me, I don't know who, me and my other personalities, all of them. we all came to work today. Thank you so much for being here, and I think that you're so insightful and really wise for your years.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.